Welcome to another episode of the Empowerment Platform, where our goal is just to empower you to reach your goals, whatever they may be. Whether you're listening on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, make sure that you like and subscribe and also comment. We want your feedback. Today, I have a great guest with me, a friend of mine, great friend of mine. We're in a tribe together. Mr. Brentin Hess, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And so, Brentin, you're coming with us today. We're going to talk about real estate. We're going to talk about investing, because a lot of what I think empowering has to do with is financial empowerment, economic empowerment, the ability to create generational wealth, and also just not be a slave to the job. It's okay if you have a job, a career that you love, but we don't always want to just be working to pay bills. We want to be able to build on that, do some fun things. I've been listening to a lot of people talk about getting assets to pay for liabilities. And I think Brentin has done a wonderful job at showcasing that and building a strong rental portfolio, coaching now. So he does a little bit of everything. And he's not old. So you can't say you got to wait time and you got to have some time in. This is a very young guy. Brentin, kind of take us from the beginning, because you worked a 9-to-5 for a little while. Tell us about that. Tell us why real estate and how you got started.
Sure, yeah. I'll take you right back to when I was 12 years old. I'm 27 as of the recording of this episode. When I was 12, my family opened up a Keller Williams brokerage, and that's a real estate brokerage. And I ran those hallways, and they opened it up right before the 2008 financial crash. They just got their feet under them, and then the market crashed. So they were able to persevere by the skin of their teeth, and they've bounced back, and they've done very well. And my mother's been the CEO and since day one, and my father's been the broker since day one. So it's kind of born and raised in real estate. However, it was the real estate, like realtor side, not the investing side. Mm-hmm. So when I was 19, I was at college. I was working a full-time 9-to-5 with Department of Defense. There's part-time while I was in school and full-time like on the breaks. And on those, on one of those breaks when I was 19 years old, a winter break from school, I went ahead and got my real estate license. As you know, you can knock it out, 60 hours. So I did it in like 2 weeks and did it online, passed my exams. And then when I got my real estate license, also, as you know, they don't teach you anything about real estate.
Not at all.
So I went to my parents and I'm like, listen, I don't know anything. They're like, what do you think I should do? And I was a student. I had college debt. I had a Department of Defense job, making a W-2. And they said, well, you should do what we never did. And I was like, what's that? And they said, invest in real estate. And I said, okay, sounds great. How do you do that? And they're like, we don't know.
Wow.
We own the brokerage. We help people buy and sell. We do not have investments. So that's kind of where I started. I started as a college kid with a job, W-2, college debt, and I also might have been born and raised in real estate, but I still had to pave my own path with the investing, and I kind of had to figure it out as I went. So I ended up getting in a relationship, a friendship with a guy in our real estate brokerage who he had a lot of money, not a lot of time. And I had a lot of time and I had negative dollars. I had college debt. So we got in this relationship where we just like, let's flip houses together. So that turned into a partnership. And I added a friend from home. And the next thing you know, we were flipping some houses together and figuring out as we went. Like the first house we ever bought, we owned it. 2 weeks later, we're looking at each other like, maybe we should start painting. And we didn't have any contractors lined up. We had nothing figured out. So we just started painting the house and we're looking at each other in the living room thinking, this can't be how you do it. So fast forward, I ended up flipping and I got into some rentals and I have a partner with most of those. And now I left my full-time. I left that W-2 job and did real estate full-time about 4 years ago. And I'm on year 8 of the real estate investing side. And I'm continually making mistakes, paying for those learning lessons and experiences, and I'll be happy to be a resource for anybody with whatever I know and I can provide. And then I came across paths with you in the real estate investing space, and then before COVID, we were having our monthly dinners for like 2 years.
Yeah, for sure. And then now we're kind of we need to do a virtual one. That's what we got to do.
Yeah.
Do a virtual one. So, Brentin, what really became, or why? What was your why behind it? You had some real estate. You ran the hallways. Your parents didn't really talk about investing a lot. What made you want to start real estate investing and not just be a regular retail agent?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, two reasons. Number one, I mean, I saw my parents and they work really hard and they still do. And the investments and the real estate investing is often a vehicle for many to be able to leave that job, that grind. And I saw them in the grind. So I kind of learned from that mistake. I'm like, I wanted to be me to be able to leave the grind if I wanted to. However, it's still a grind to build up like a rental portfolio to then leave the grind. So it still is conundrum. However, that was one of the reasons that also when I was working at my full-time job, maybe you can relate. I know others can.
Mm-hmm.
I was there just pounding my head against the wall saying, I just want to get out of here.
Yep.
So I'm like, I got to figure out something that's going to pay me. And I just born and raised in real estate. And then what I didn't know then and I know now is real estate is such an amazing vehicle for people to be able to go out there and do their own thing, make a living and leave their job.
Great. And there's so many aspects of the real estate. So you hinted on starting out with the flipping. Let's go into that a little bit. You also talked about one thing that I know a lot of people, when they hear about real estate investing, the number one thing they say is, I don't have the money. For most people who want to get into it, well, I don't have the money. How do I invest in something when I don't have the money? And of course, you hear everybody telling you that you don't have to have a lot of money to invest in real estate. So that is true, but that is always not as easy as it sounds. For Brentin, if you listened and heard what he said that he met someone who had money, didn't have time. Brentin had time. When you are looking for that partner, that money partner, you're going to have to bring something to the table as well. Either expertise, knowledge, time, or just you doing the hustling. Another thing is you can borrow money, and they call those hard money lenders, where you go to them for a short-term amount to cover your purchase and renovation. You're going to still have to bring some money to the table, and the interest rates are much higher at that point. But if you do it right, you buy the house, renovate it, flip it, pay the lender off, and you keep some of the money. So you have to work your numbers up front. Brentin, how did you learn to navigate that course? How did you learn to work the numbers? When did you start building an actual contractor team? Because in the beginning, it sounded like you didn't do any of that.
Mm-hmm.
But I know with time and with knowledge, those things come. So kind of walk us through that.
Sure. Well, I can definitely give a great perspective from somebody who doesn't have a lot of money. Because when I got started, I didn't have any money. I was 19, 20 years old, college debt that I was working on paying off. And I wasn't making much of the government. So for anybody who's saying, oh, wow, I'm envious of your situation because you met somebody with a lot of cash, that's not necessarily the best option either, because who I met with a lot of cash, while it was great, it became my crutch. I didn't learn how to go out and use other people's money or get, like you mentioned, hard money lending, because he had all the cash. Mm-hmm. And I was splitting those profits accordingly. So I'm not saying there's one better way than another, nor would I want anybody to go out and repeat my exact path. I do, like you mentioned, I do want to outline there are options for you. And those options are available. And there's a lot of books out there, biggerpockets.com, as far as going on there. It's a number one free online resource for real estate investors or wannabe real estate investors. And you can ask the question, how do I do this with no money? And how do I structure those deals? And that's been asked, that's been answered. Just be
Mhm.
careful who you listen to when it comes to the advice on there. So there's a lot of good articles and books out there on how to invest with no money in. And for me, I started with somebody with a lot of cash, and I eventually transitioned to doing it on my own and using other people's money, such as a hard money lender and people like yourself who's like, listen, I'll lend you $100,000 or $50,000 and $300,000 at an interest rate, and then I'll pay you interest. I'll take your money, I'll put it to work, I'll get the profits, so you get the interest on your money.
Right.
So that's kind of how we structured those deals, and now I do now. And as far as the construction team, I would say that it was the blessing in disguise to have to go out there and meet with multiple contractors because I didn't have a team. I didn't know who to go to. So I ended up getting to learn what's a good contractor versus not. And I did all the material runs, so I got to learn a lot of materials. And that was my early phases. So being involved in that sense ended up being fruitful in the end. That, if I ever – I still, like we were just talking before the show started, I just had another contractor burn me, and I'm on year 8. It's nuts. So whole nother side of the business where like it's not all sunshine and rainbows, and you have a construction business, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And when it comes to real estate investing, I mean, you might end up leaving your 40-hour work week to get an 80-hour work week. However, if done correctly, which I'm still in my journey on doing, it can be a retirement plan, and that's kind of the driver.
Absolutely. And to piggyback off of that, you're definitely, I know I do, and I know Brenton probably will too, recommend that when you think about getting into real estate investing, understand that it is work, real work. And I recommend you definitely think about doing some of this stuff, or at least being heavily involved in the beginning. You hear about passive income through rentals. It's anything but passive. There's a way you get there, but it's never just 100% passive. And you need a team. In the beginning, you're going to need, if you don't have your real estate license, you're going to need a realtor to help you navigate buying and selling, understanding numbers, finding values of properties. You're going to need a contractor, somebody to do that work on the property, to manage all the subcontractors, electricians, plumbers, all those things that you need, material runs. I highly advise you try to figure out what's being done. Go to the job sites, learn these things so you can understand when a contractor is speaking to you, you can respond with some level of understanding. You need attorneys. You want to know, get contracts reviewed. You want to make sure you're buying and selling properly. You need title companies, agents to close on properties. You need runners. There's just so many pieces to this puzzle that if you put them all together, it's a lucrative business, but it's not something that you can put on autopilot. And that's where, and me and Brenton, we're going to cover mistakes as well. That's some of the mistakes I made early on in the business, thinking that you could put things on autopilot by putting people in charge. Yes, you can do that, but there's still a level of watching that you must do to keep your finger on the pulse. Now, Brenton, let's go from flipping. We understand the dynamics of flipping a house. You find a property that needs some work. You scout the neighborhood, make sure that it's the ugly house on the block. There's value in that. The values are enough for you to go buy it, renovate it, and sell it for a profit.
Yep.
Now, rentals kind of follows a similar path, but you're not selling it off, you're holding it. And you went from 0 units to a hefty amount of units in a short amount of time. Tell us about that. How did you work that out? What were the steps involved, and what were some lessons learned?
All right. Rentals is often everybody's like number one goal when it comes to real estate investing. Like, I'm sure, I mean, when you talk to people, aren't they all saying like, yeah, I want rentals to retire, the passive income, leave my job, do nothing all day?
Absolutely. That's it.
So it's a hot topic. It's sexy, but it is a lot of work. And I am going on year 4 of having rentals, and what I'm doing is I'm scaling down. I'm doing quite the opposite. What sounds sexy to get more rentals, I'm actually selling some because I now have some of the my losing properties that I've learned a lot of lessons through that I want to get off the plate and keep the winners. So lots of lessons there. My disclosure is I'm not the guy with a bunch of rentals who's financially free. I'm the guy with a bunch of rentals who's still working really hard to position them to pay me down the road.
Right.
So how I got started was same way with flipping, same way with anything. I mean, you figure it out by getting connected with the right individuals, such as yourself, reading the and getting the properties. Once you learn how to analyze a deal, it's as simple as reviewing as many deals as it takes until one looks good. And then when one looks good, you go out to the property, confirm your numbers with a realtor like yourself, a construction expert like yourself, and you get your numbers straight. And then you figure out your lending, you pull the trigger, and you go.
See, that sounds sweet. Short and simple. Now, the long that's the Campbell Soup condensed version of buying a rental. But then you're thinking about, and like you said, that the dynamics are just that simple. Keeping a rental, making it perform, purchasing in the right area, those are the things that require time and consistency. What I noticed, and here's some lessons that I learned from doing property management. I've managed a lot of rentals for people who just bought and they had no idea where they're buying. They just did not know the neighborhoods. Someone promised them that if you buy this deal, you can get X amount of rent. And it always sounds great. Oh, I buy it for $40,000 and make $1,800 a month. Not in this neighborhood, you won't. And they had no idea. And that's a trap for a lot of out-of-state investors. None of what we're sharing is to scare you, it's to prepare you. When you must analyze a deal, you must know the areas, you must know the values, you must know the rental amounts in order to invest successfully. Because even if you're heavy Section 8, which a lot of people love, that's the other sexy part. Well, I can get government, they pay it, and I don't have to worry about anything. Well, you have to worry about the inspections. Some of those properties get lived on a little bit harder than others. And then if you don't fix what's required, you lose that Section 8 rent. And it could take a month, 2 or 3 to get the property back in shape. So, Brentin, when you were building your rental portfolio, how did it was with private money, I'm assuming, and then you had a construction team. How did you find, place, and manage your tenants?
Well, I know you have a lot of dedicated followers, and I know you're also super humble. Just for those who don't know, I mean, you Tyrus, you have construction business, property management business, realtor. So you're seeing the different phases, and I would consider you more of a subject matter expert than me, and that's where I'll give my opinion and overview, and then I think definitely people should reach out to you when it comes to specifics, because you manage so many more than us. What I did was I analyzed deals until one looked like it would be decent. I got a construction team out there to give me estimates. I ran it by people in our market and said, and I'm in the Baltimore market for those of you who don't know, and ran it by other people thinking, what do you think? So like, do you think I can get $1,800 a month in rent? Why not? And people who have been in this area. So when I got started, I mean, I was pulling comps from 3 or 4 blocks away thinking it was fine.
Mm-hmm.
When 3 or 4 blocks away could be a different world in Baltimore.
Yeah.
So I'm running it by other people, figuring out. But once I thought I had a good deal and I had to buy it, I used a hard money lender and some other private funds from other people, and I put all that money together. I bought the house, renovated it, and then went to a bank and refinanced it. Paid back the hard money lender, paid back the private funds. And now I have this asset. And in there, after I renovated, I did get the tenant in there. So for those who may or may not know, there is a named strategy for this investing, and it's called the BRRRR strategy, BRRRR. So buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat. So you buy it, you renovate it, you rent it out, then you go to the bank and refinance, give everybody their money back, and then you can repeat it if you choose.
And that is a method where you can get in with little out of pocket, because if you have the right relationship, especially if you know someone with money, they can front that money. And then, of course, you go through the process. When you refinance, when you get that money back from the bank for that 30-year or 20-year or however long-term loan that you want, you pay your lender back. They get their money with some interest. And then now you have a asset with a tenant that's paying that liability, which is the mortgage, and you're moving forward and you rinse and repeat. Now, the mistake people make is they buy a property that they can't refinance or it doesn't refinance where they think it will, and then you lose money. So the devil is in the details. You have to really analyze these deals and situations, because if you don't, you can find yourself borrowing a lot of money and can't pay that money back. And that happens. People get burned, situations occur. So make sure that when you're doing this, when you think about this strategy, it's a wonderful way to build portfolios, but make sure that you are on your point, on the point with the numbers. Now, Brenton, for you, do you prefer single families or multifamilies?
Well, my partner Alston and I, we have like 36. We have like 36 units, and scaling down a little bit more. And I have one solo one myself, and we have a mix of single family detached, row homes, and we have multifamily houses ranging from a 3-unit building to a 5-unit. And pros and cons to each. In my opinion, I really like the numbers of multifamily on paper. I really thought that, okay, I get this one building and I could get 3 different tenants. So if one moves out, then I'm still getting paid and I can still cover my mortgage. I like that. Yet, as I manage these, I really do not enjoy how one tenant's mad at the other tenant, and there's drama, then there's noise, and then it's the type of clientele, the type of tenants that are more attracted to these are different. And here's the big kicker, is the duration, the tenancy duration, the duration of which the tenant is there is less in an apartment than a row home or single family detached. And what I mean by that is we have more tenant turnover, more like short term, like 1 to 2 year, I'm going to live in your apartment until I can get a house type of people. And that turnover is expensive. So we have more multifamily for sure, a lot of multifamily. If I was building a rental portfolio again, knowing what I know from the very beginning, I would still look at the numbers. I'd pull the trigger on a good multifamily, but I would lean more towards single family because of it being a little bit less management intensive, unless I was to hire a property manager like you.
Interesting. And what's funny is I had this conversation yesterday with another multifamily investor, and I made an assumption. I said, "You invest all multifamily, right?" He's like, "No, I've been moving into row homes for the same exact reasons that you just described. Headaches with the tenancy, just people not getting along, and then the turnover. People like to stay in single family homes or row homes a lot longer than they will an apartment." And I found it interesting. I'm like, well, my thought process was to get into multis because I got one roof, I got one building, one siding. But even with that, depending on, especially in Baltimore City, a lot of these properties, the water isn't separately metered. So you're paying water and you're monitoring that and you're trying to figure that out. Some of these places that I have managed personally, they don't have separate hot water heaters. So people are running out of hot water, or people are using the electric and causing the electric to go out. And it's just a huge, huge headache. So whether you're deciding single family or multi, think about the pros and cons to each. Single family, of course, you got a whole bunch of single houses, more people, more hot water heaters. You got everything for each individual place. So You got to just work your numbers. Again, we're going back and
Mm-hmm.
harping on numbers, numbers, numbers. But I think that don't rush into it. Take your time. You may have to look at 100 possibilities before you get that one deal. And once you get that rhythm and that flow, you'll be able to consistently find deals that fit your criteria.
Yep, there are people who have excellent properties that are multifamily, and there are people who have excellent properties that are single family or row homes. And then there's the contrary. You have people who have awful ones of each. So if you end up with a multifamily and you end up with a single family, then with your own experience, given your own resources, whether that's time or money to pay for management, you will learn what you would prefer. So most important thing is just to get out there and take action. Sometimes you can't control the deals you look at. And what I mean by that is if you got wholesalers, you got people out there, deal finders out there looking for deals, and they're trying to make that fee off the purchase price. And they're sending you deals. I mean, they're going to send you multifamily, they're going to send you single family, they're going to send it all to you. So just look at it all, and eventually you'll learn what's best for you.
And then there's another thing I want to make sure that the numbers are reflected, because this is a pet peeve of mine. This is something
Here we go.
I hate is such a strong word, but even I see when people sell real estate courses, they talk about, I went and bought this property for this buy and hold. I bought it. I put this amount into it. It's worth this. And I'm cash flowing $1,200 a month. They don't ever go into the expenses part of that. When you rent a property out, say it's $1,200 a month, you have to pay your mortgage. You have to pay the insurance. You have to pay taxes. So that is one payment, a pity. Principal, interest, taxes, insurance. That is one payment. So say that's $500 a month. Now we're at $700 a month. That is not net cash flow. I don't care who tells you that, because you have to factor in vacancy, 8 to 10% a year. You need to factor in maintenance costs, capital expenses. Over a 20-year time period, what are you going to have to replace in that house? Roof, maybe, water heater, carpet. If you have carpet in your rental, you're going to want to update the kitchen. All of those things cost. Those are your capital expenses. Those are your large expenses that every so many years you can expect to replace that. You need to calculate that in your spreadsheet or in your numbers. You also need to calculate the regular maintenance items. Tenant tore this up, or the faucet broke, tub leaking, water, things that just happen. Once you start to calculate that, then when you subtract those numbers out, it looks more like $100, $200, $300 is my net cash flow. So you want to make sure that when you say net, take out all the expenses, because that's what I also witnessed with a lot of my clients. They bought properties, they didn't either do a full rehab, or they bought it from people who didn't do a great rehab, and they thought they were going to be making this money, and they didn't, because they had to do a lot of work. And then, God forbid, tenants don't pay. That's a whole nother story, because now you got evictions, which take months in Baltimore, and you got turnover. So if you're not factoring those costs in, your net cash flow actually will look a whole lot less. And for a few years, you may be losing money if you don't buy right. What's your experience with that, Brentin?
You hit it right. I mean, I was laughing when you brought it up, because I'm thinking the same thing. I'm thinking to get the pie in the sky numbers. You got what everybody thinks and they want to think, and they train themselves to think. And then you got the actual truth.
Yeah.
So that 50% expense ratio is exactly seems to be exactly in line with a good rule of thumb. And what that typically means is if you're getting $1,800 a month in rent, then take $900 out, and that'll be part of your expenses. And you got a lot of before debt. So to pay for your property taxes, if you're paying utilities such as water, to pay for any future maintenance or repairs. You're pulling out money and budgeting for that every month for the one day you got a big repair, and your property management.
Mm-hmm.
And then what's left, you have to pay your mortgage. So if you make it $1,800 a month in rent, you have $900 set aside for expenses or used for expenses, and the other $900 is before your debt, and then maybe your mortgage is $700 a month, and then you're really only cash flowing $200 a month. And I'm a believer that, based on my experiences, don't spend what you make. So letting that rental bank account accumulate so that you can afford rainy days and turnovers and big expenses. So I like to see, like, my rental, like the one that I have myself, I don't let that bank account drop below $8,000, because I'm just thinking I can make almost any repair. I mean, it's fully renovated. It's newly renovated. I mean, if the roof is bad or the furnace needs to be replaced, I mean, I could do all that within $8,000. I could pay my $500 a month mortgage with that money for a few months. So that's like my rainy day fund for my rental.
Makes sense. And it's smart. That's why a lot of people that get into investing, you want to do this a smart way. It can really be that generational wealth builder. It can get you out of your job. You can use some of that funds. I've heard others, especially some of our mutual coaches, talk about using the assets to pay for liability. Let this property fund this vacation, pay this car note, pay this bill. Yes, only after you I would heavily take Brentin's advice. Let the bank account build up first. Then once you have a nice cushion in there, you can cover major expenses that come up. Then start to siphon that money or pull it to different places. If you want to have a property that pays just for vacations, let it be that. But have that rainy day fund first. Then you can do all of the extra things. And I saved this for last because this is the entry that everybody wants to get into. And I don't think that people think about how much work it really is, and that's wholesaling. So wholesaling essentially is you find a property, you get a contract on that property for X amount from the seller. Then you go find a buyer, which would be a rehabber or someone who wants to buy and hold, and you sell it for $5,000, $3,000, $10,000 more than what you originally put the contract on the property for. You keep the difference. They get the property. Seller's happy, buyer's happy, you're happy. That's wholesaling in a nutshell. That is the basic basic. Just, it's not hard. What people don't realize is that it takes a lot of work and a lot of effort. Brentin, you were wholesaling at one point. You made it from here to there, but you got out of it as a primary. Tell us a little bit about that business and why you decided to let it go.
Sure. Wholesaling is a lot of work, like you mentioned. You're basically a deal finder. You're going out there and finding deals. And I'm the type of person who I'd rather find 6 deals a year and flip all 6. So my options would be, I could find these deals. I don't want to say this, but I want to make 60 grand a year, let's just say. As a wholesaler, you might be making, let's just say, $5,000 on average for your finder's fee or assignment fee. Well, I would much rather flip 6 houses, only have to find 6 deals a year, flip them, and make $10,000 on each, which is going to be low. So maybe find 3 houses and make 20 grand on each for 60 grand a year, rather than going out and having to, especially in today's market, finding 12 deals at 5,000 spread each to make 60 grand a year. So I can find less deals and make more money from them by flipping. I just have to deal with the headaches of having the construction and resale. So for me, I'd rather find less deals, because when it comes to finding deals, that's where a lot of my time was going. And it was hard. It was hard for me to find enough deals to make a living when I'm only making the small spreads. And I had to build a team. We were cold calling over 100 hours a week. And that comes with heightened expenses. So it just wasn't the time. I mean, that for me wasn't there. However, for some people, they think the opposite. They're like, Brentin, I don't want the inventory. I don't want to hold a asset and deal with the lending and the construction. I want to be in and out and not have to worry about having a property that could give me risk down the road, whether it sells for less money or construction goes wrong. And they make a great living off wholesaling. So I'm not saying that it's impossible. For me, it was too much work, too much money. It didn't give me the same dollar per hour as if I just flipped the house.
Yeah, and I agree with you. When I was doing it, wholesaling is a full-time job plus some. If you want to leave your job and get wealth and freedom, wholesaling is not that piece. Just the sheer volume of lead generation that you have to do in order to make money in wholesaling is, people say, well, oh, I've made $140,000 a month. And this is something that how much did you spend to make that money? If you're spending 120, you didn't really make a whole lot. Or if you're spending 110, because with wholesaling, it's the lowest barrier of entry. Possibly. You still have to have money. You have to buy a list. You have to buy leads. If you're not buying leads, you're spending time and gas driving around, driving for dollars. So that's still work. You are, as Brentin mentioned, somebody has to call. It's either you calling or you're hiring virtual assistants or you're hiring a team to call those people, cold call or text. Text has become popular. But even the texting software, $500 a month. So the numbers behind what it takes to build a wholesaling business it can be enormous. Just the sheer amount of volume. You got to buy the list. You got to skip trace the list. You got to have admins. You got to have either texting, cold calling, or something to build a true system that will allow you to make money. And then once you have those leads, you got to be able to negotiate. There are hundreds of wholesalers in the Baltimore area, have to be, because every time we called, the seller would say, well, I talked to 3 or 4 other people that offered me this. So you're in stiff competition. With rehabbing, rehabbers are out there, deals are hard to find, but when you buy that house, you're really only competing with yourself to fix it, renovate it, and get it on market. Now, if you have a lot of properties in an area, you may be competing against them to see if your house is the best one. But with wholesaling, it's a whole nother ball game. And from what I have seen, the wholesalers that I know that do it at a high level, all of them are exiting the business. They're either exiting the business or they have streamlined it so much so to where it's an actual company and they're not doing that day-to-day work anymore.
Yep. Finding deals is becoming harder and harder. So being in the deal finding business is probably going to be very hard and expensive. Some people seem to make it work.
Oh, yeah. Much love to them. If I wholesale a deal, it's something because I saw a property that came through and it just doesn't work for what I'm trying to do for it.
Right.
But other than that, it is not a business that I would put my toes back in to consider just trying to build out. Because Brentin and I used to do this and do it at a high level, and it sounded good. But after we saw what kind of work it took, you dialed back. Now, Brentin, I want you to take us through that. You mentioned it earlier with the rentals. I know it happened with you with wholesaling, the less is more idea. Mm-hmm. Where did that come from? When did you start thinking that less is more? And kind of tell us about your journey now. What are you doing now?
Yep. So I am always in my own head, and I'm wired to stay busy, do more, build, get bigger. And it wasn't until when I hired the right coach, he gave me a different perspective and said, just ask me the right questions. You know, why do you want more? What would that do for you to incur all that extra time and overhead and money? And, what would these extra flips this year do for you, and blah, blah, blah. And I just kept realizing, you know what, it really, I don't need more. I actually need less. And that was a huge breakthrough that I'm now working on, because I could squeeze what I need out of less. Mm-hmm. I can reduce my lifestyle, reduce my expenses. I can be more careful of my margins. So flip 3 houses for $50,000 each and make $150 that year, rather than flipping 15 and $10,000 each.
Yeah.
I want less headaches. less projects, less going on, spend more time with my family. And in order to do that, I'm selling rentals and leaving the really good ones. I am having to say no to flips that I otherwise would have said yes to, just because I know they're going to be more headache than for the money that's coming back from them. So my dollar per hour would be lower. So I'm just being forced to put my personal life first, and I'm not there yet. I'm working towards it, and it's this concept or theme of addition by subtraction.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew really big, got really messy, careless to mistakes and details, and then now I pay for that. So I'm working on reducing the expenses, reducing the liability, reducing my risk and exposure to the market. And you know what? There's going to come a time again where when the market shifts and deals become easier to find, or they're more lucrative, the margins are there, then I want to be the one still around to take advantage of that. I don't want to be the one who went on a buying spree during COVID and then thinking that the market's going to keep going up and up and up, and then it doesn't. So I'm also positioning myself to survive.
Oh, that's great. That's great, because now you're talking about just planning, future thinking, forecasting, putting your personal welfare above the business welfare. And it makes total sense, because everything you said is true. Even with me scaling as fast as I did early on, things got sloppy, things got messy. You cannot. And I used to think, and it really got to I guess it was going to my head when people was like, oh man, you got all this going on, you're doing so much, how do you do it all? And what I've learned is busy doesn't mean productive. And like you stated, you start to miss things get messy, things get sloppy. The more things that we have going on, the less attention to detail that we can really pay attention to across all those different aspects. It's a lot. Real estate is simple, but there are just so many moving pieces in there. You have to have a focus point. And when you're bouncing from thing to thing to thing, growing, the focus lessens over time. And then you start to really miss things, lose things. And when we talk about loss, we talk about money. And when you start to lose a lot of money in this business, you figure out how to revamp yourself, how to take those losses and turn them into lessons, and then how to make the best decision. So what Brentin said is very true. Why keep a whole lot of properties for the sake of saying I got 500 units when 450 of them are not performing? And that's exactly what I hear in the industry, and that's what I see is what I know. There are a lot of people out there touting a lot of big numbers, and they're broke, or they are going crazy, or their units aren't performing. And you just want to be sure that if real estate is a way that you want generational wealth, get in it for the right reasons, come in it the right way, and take your time. No one needs to know how many units you have. That's why I didn't ask Brentin for a number. I don't want to know how much he makes. I don't want to know the specific number of units, because it doesn't matter. What matters is, does he have enough units to do what he wants to do for his life, for his goals? Having 1,000 units sounds sexy. Get 1,000 and let me know how it feels, because it's rough. It's rough out there.
Get 1,000 and let us know how your marriage is.
Oh, yeah. How anything is, because it's crazy. I remember when I was up over 200 units managed, and I'm like, man, this absolutely drives you crazy. All the time there's something, some issue, and then you have to be built for it. You want to put those fires out. You want to, at a certain point, you have to lose some of your personable nature. You just have to be a robot, because it'll run you crazy. And now, to recap what we talked about rentals, we talked about flipping, we talked about wholesaling. There's other aspects of the business, and we didn't go into how you can find deals and buy deals, because all that can come with time. But what I think I want to leave you all with is being knowledgeable of the numbers, thinking about why you're doing this. What is your why for this? Understanding that if you leave a job for this, you're picking up another job. There will always be work in this. There are ways you can mitigate it, ways you can lessen your responsibility, but there's still you're going to be required to put a level of effort in order to be successful. Brenton, talk to us a little bit about your coaching, what you're currently doing with your students, what that looks like. And if someone's interested, how can they get in contact with you and how can you help them?
Sure. So, as you all know, Tyrus does coaching as well. And I have a very niche target for my coaching, and that is helping somebody through their first 3 flips. And I'm very intimate with them and involved. And right now, while I'm full and I'm not looking to add anybody, I still like to be a resource for you when it comes to flipping houses. And you can certainly apply. And when a spot's open up, we can have that conversation. And you can reach me on any social media platform. Well, Facebook or Instagram would be preferred. And that is just my first name, last name. So at Brentin, Brentin, Hess, Hess. And my email is Brentin, Brentin, at BrentinHess.com. So first name at firstname.lastname.com. First Brentin at BrentinHess.com. And I'll be happy to answer any questions. Send it a link if somebody wants to see if that's something they're looking to do. It's only for those in Maryland. So it's very niche. It's somebody in Maryland who wants to flip their first 3 houses. And I would say, just as a qualifier for what we're looking to do, whether it's the cost, my cost, also to be able to go out there and find the deals, I would say you need at least like $20,000 of access. And therefore, we can begin those conversations, see if we're a good fit. Otherwise, any other coaching, I'd go to Tyrus.
And what I love is that's a lot of what we just went over. Focus. Brenton is very niched in what he's looking for. You got a lot of coaches that take anybody, anywhere, anytime. I can fill up 100 slots. And what happens is you don't get that level of care. You don't get the attention to detail. You don't get the support that you need when you go and join these big coaching groups or these people that say, I have 100 students, I have 200 students. I always want to just bring value and honesty. And this industry is just like all the other industries. Are you really getting what you paid for when you get that coach? I think real estate is one of them where people spend the most money and most people never do a deal. That's just the honest mark. That's the truth. Most people spend a lot of money in real estate and never do a deal. And if they do a deal, they probably don't win. There are small numbers of people who stay in this and actually win because it takes effort. And what happens is when you sign up for those coaching programs, they're selling you a dream. They're selling you you can buy that rental and cash flow $900,000 on it. And while their paperwork may look good, all of us got contracts, all of us have layouts and frameworks and these steps. Are they really? What happens when it's time to negotiate on the phone? Will they pick up the phone with you and help you? What really happens when it's time to put money up for the deal? Where's that money coming from? Everybody's telling you that you don't need money to invest. Well, you need some money somewhere. I don't think you can do it for zero money out of pocket unless you're lucky. And that lucky means somehow you found a deal from your cousin's mama auntie and you sold it to somebody else. But even if you're borrowing money from a private lender, even if you have a connection, it's somebody's money. You're responsible for that. You're responsible to that lender and that relationship. So when you're thinking about getting into this real estate business, Brenton has done this thing successfully at a high level at a young age. But I know Brenton. I know his processes. I know what he does. He doesn't do anything without analyzing over and over and over and over. It's a spreadsheet. There's a system to it. And then there's that real estate knowledge. He's a licensed agent. He has knowledge there. And then from the lessons learned as we went through this, both Brenton and I think we took something on the chin, some big blows to the gut, and we are coming out of it. We are both learning that less is more, changing direction. So, when you get into this business, surround yourself with people that are like-minded, that want to see you win, that want to move you forward, and that won't take your money and won't promise you something. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. This business is not easy. And even the most successful people that I know in this business always say, man, I'll quit tomorrow. I might quit tomorrow. But think about it. If real estate is something that you want to be involved in, connect with me. I can connect you to the right people. If Brenton is someone you want to partner with, he doesn't have open slots now, but as those people go through their 3 deals and he's ready to open up space, he's a great resource, a great, great person to be able to help you through it. Brenton, if you have a piece of advice or a couple of things you want to leave with the people, what would they be?
I would say there is power in learning from other people's mistakes. So go out and work for free for somebody and learn from them, or pay them for their time. Like, you got to give them something to get their time and their expertise. And I know specifically, like, there have been, I'm still learning, still making mistakes, especially even with coaching clients. Sometimes, it's not all perfect. We don't flip a house perfectly. However, I do give advice and I prevent them from making mistakes I've made in the past, which I can specifically quantify. Like, even something as simple as making sure the air filters are cleaned every 2 weeks can prevent you from having to replace your furnace. So because of construction and all the debris in the air. So something even as granular, tactical as that could be $4,000 worth of knowledge. Oh, yeah. So therefore, you can work for somebody for free and get that, get their time, or you can pay them for it. And I would do one or the other. Or go out and make your own mistakes. School of Hard Knocks, the way that I did. That's not my recommendation.
Let me give the people some funny but things that'll make you mad. So I had an HVAC system put into a unit. We were finished, and they moved in. Tenants moved in, and they said, "Oh, there's leaking in the ceiling in the basement. The ceiling's coming down." So I'm like, okay, is it a pipe? When you get brand new plumbing at a house, before you can turn the water on, it has to be pressure tested. So you blow air through it, make sure there's no leaks. So I've had this happen before, where after that was done, drywall guys go and put a nail in the pipe. So I'm thinking the same thing. So I had a plumber check the pipe, snake the lines. Good. He put a camera in there. Nothing, no pipe work. We had shut the water off, but it was still leaking. I'm like, what in the world is? Find out that the HVAC guy, the condensation line, he ran it and he was going to drain it through the laundry drain. Just drop it in there. It wasn't long enough. So instead of him making it long enough or rerunning it, he just left it hanging in the wall. So of course, with the AC on and it's hot, it's just dripping.
Like, he didn't have it draining anywhere?
No, just in the wall. So it drained on the ceiling. So the ceiling was coming down. I had to first pay somebody to go extend that, pay drywall guys to cut out all that wet drywall, patch it, sand it, paint it. These are things in the business that they just happen. And when you think about it, you get very mad because it was someone else's carelessness. But then it's a lesson. Now I start checking. The more things that hit you on the chin, the more things you start being aware of and asking about. Did you do this? Did you do that? Did you check this? And people don't like that, because what they feel is you're questioning my work. Some people may feel that you're questioning their integrity, but now it's all about business. It's not about feelings. I need to make sure that I'm protected, and I want to make sure that you're protected, because things like that, now the tenant's mad. And when the tenant sees something like that happen, they're wondering, okay, what else didn't happen? Like, I had an appliance company go in. They didn't hook the gas dryer up. They just didn't put a gas line there. Told me everything was working. But the tenant goes in, my dryer don't work. I send the guy there. He's like, there's no gas line attached to it. How is it supposed to work? Simple things like that. Those are the things that, if you get into this business, you need to check on, run them down, and they get overlooked. When you talking about putting a house together, the grand scheme of renovating that entire house, it's small things like that that you just don't think to check.
Yep.
Those are the things that could make or break you. Like Brentin said, if you got to redo a furnace system because people don't want to just change out the filter, that's a big thing at a small ticket that could have been just a preventative measure. So, Brentin, I'd like to thank you for joining me. Thank you for bringing your knowledge and your wisdom on this topic. You are doing what most people never get to do, and you're doing it at a young age. So as you get older, I know that you'll be doing it even better at a higher level. There's something that you mentioned, and out of all the things that I picked up were having knowledge, researching, working it yourself if you have to, and also getting that coaching, that advice, that mentorship, whatever you want to call it, paying somebody for their time or working for it, and also reading books. You mentioned biggerpockets.com, which is the leading on real estate education, and it's free. I mean, you can go and search anything in there to build up your real estate knowledge. So there's no excuse to say that you don't know something. It's there. And then when you take a certain amount of knowledge to a mentor or a coach, they have something to work with and they're not hand holding you. So again, Brentin, thank you so much for joining us. I definitely appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed the transparent conversation as always when it comes to you. And I'm here if anybody has any questions about what we talked about. Otherwise, bombard Tyrus.
And people, don't let this scare you. We encourage you to use real estate as a vehicle for investment, but do it the right way. There are so many ways out there that people spread. Just do it the right way. And so as we wrap up, again, thank you for joining the Empowerment Platform for another episode. Remember to like, share this content if you feel that it was valuable. It could impact somebody's life. And our goal at the Empowerment Platform is just to empower you to reach your goals. Have a great one.